All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
All right, cool. Throughout this, guys, if anybody has anything they want to go over in particular, please let me know. From the people that had texted me, you guys had texted me spouse objection, and then banking. Juan, you had mentioned banking as well, which I didn't really put that in the notes here, but we'll go over that as well. Um, but guys, so this I wanted to kind of focus this. I know it's Saturday. I'm going to get on dialing immediately after this. But I know we all want to, a lot of us want to dial. So I'm gonna try to go through this like quickly, but also, if you guys have questions, like please let me know. So before, and this is going to be focused on like, sorry, one sec, someone's texting me. Join breakout room 15, comma, at the bottom, there should be a breakout room button. All right, but first thing I kind of wanted to talk about was just like, obviously, this is going to be focused on like closing at the end, right? And I really feel like I've only started to really get more into this, and like learn and try to pick up new ways to do it. It really in like the last couple months, last month or two, because I feel like if you're working 50 hours a week, you're with this like sales experience that a lot of us already have, you should be able to get to 20K a month just by working the hours and just by like making 300 plus dials a day, right? But obviously, like once you have the script down, once you have that down, you're getting, you're averaging 5, 6 closes a week. Like try to start getting better, and start focusing on like certain objections, how you would overcome certain things, right? So, and one thing too, I want to like touch on before, just like a lot of us, you sell solar, we all know that like you're not really going to close them post sale, but you always have like that fake hope in your mind, right? So just know I've been doing this now since, November of last year. I don't know exactly how many accounts I've sold, but it's probably 200 or so at least. I don't even know, but I'm averaging like 30 to 40K a month. And I've probably had 3 to 4 accounts total that I ended up getting a deal with that I didn't close the first time. So just know that if they say they want to think about it, if they want to talk to their wife, they want to talk to their daughter, whatever it is, the odds are like 99% you're probably not going to close them after you get off the first phone call with them. And when you're first starting, that's not, it takes a while to realize that, but I'm telling you that now. And anybody who's done this for any amount of time or done sales for any amount of time that's direct to consumer will tell you the same thing. If you've done like business to business sales, obviously it's different, but with this, it's one call closes 99% of the time. So just know that you may as well do everything in your power to get their banking and their social while you're on the phone with them. Even if for whatever reason, I have a couple of accounts that they don't want to start paying until, next month or 2 months from now or whatever it is. And I'll save their information and I'll set a reminder to submit it later. But just know that, because if you're able to even get them back on the phone, which 90% of the time you're going to get ghosted. But even if you are able to get them back on the phone, they're going to say, we thought about it, talked to my wife, and, we're good. I forgot we already had coverage in place. So they'll make up some bullshit. Or, I haven't even had a chance. How many times have you like actually got someone on the phone? They're like, I haven't even had a chance to think about it. Like, can you call me next week? And then it's just like this perpetual chase, right? So just know that like that's the mindset you should have on every call is you got to close them right now or the deal's pretty much done. I'll still call people back and I'll still follow up with people because everyone falls into that a little bit, but just know it's a very, very low odd. So first thing I wanted to go over was this was I need to talk to my kid's spouse objection. And guys, I didn't come up with this. I found somebody on YouTube who has anybody heard of, everybody's heard of Jeremy Minor, right?
Yep.
Okay. So he does that like NEPQ training, and it's basically just about getting them kind of like making their brain decide that they want it. It's all about like asking questions and asking them in the right way. And I'm going to I'll send this PDF or this document out to you guys afterwards. But it's all about just like getting them to realize that they do need it. And it's about asking questions because a lot of the time, and I still do it too. I'm not like 100% perfect at any of these. I don't think anybody is. And none of this is going to work every single time. But what the whole thing is you just have to try and you have to throw as much as you can at them as you possibly can, because once you get them off the phone, it's pretty much dead. So this is one way to overcome the I need to talk to my kids, I need to think about it, spouse, whatever. But yeah, that's not a problem. And it's all about the whole thing that I try to do is not be confrontational. You don't want to be like, well, why? Well, why don't you want it? Or why do you have to think about it? It just puts people in the defensive mode and it usually doesn't work. Like sometimes it can work. And I mean, first off, before I even go into this, I know I'm already kind of rambling, but obviously you can get a lot of deals by just being like, well, may I make a recommendation, sir? And I put this in my version of the script, like, may I make a recommendation for you, sir? So obviously our job is to make sure that you do have some coverage in place, right? We don't want an accident to happen or, time to go by and then life gets busy and think about it. And then, next thing you know, a couple months have gone by, nothing's happened, then an accident happens, whether it's a health condition pops up or God forbid you pass away and there's nothing in place. So may I make a recommendation for you? All right. So what I would recommend is just going for like the silver or the bronze option for right now, whatever feels the most comfortable for you, because we still have to make sure we can get you approved. And then once you are able to get approved, if you want to increase the coverage later in the future, you always can. Does that make sense, sir? All right, perfect. So we'll go ahead and get some coverage in place for you and then just continue on. You can get a lot of deals like that. But if that doesn't work, you can use these as well. So I need to talk to my kids, talk to my spouse. Yeah, that's not a problem. How does your kids or your spouse, how would they feel about putting something in place to protect them from having to come out of pocket to pay for your funeral and other final expenses when something does happen to you? I'm not sure, usually get like, I'm not sure. That's why I want to talk to them, or I think they would want me to get something. Okay, I understand. What will they do though if you go to them and they tell you that they don't want you to use any funds towards getting a policy and you don't have that protection for them and then something does happen to you? What would they do? What would that look like? Well, I don't really know. That's why I need to talk to them. Yeah, no, I completely understand. What will they have to go like what would they have to go through though if you did pass away? God forbid, say a year or two goes by and you never got the coverage in place. If they got stuck having to pay for the funeral, the other expenses, and if they don't have the money to do that, because you had mentioned to me, they weren't really in a financial position to cover it. What would they have to do at that point to cover it? I don't know. I just hope it doesn't happen. Or let's say something like that, right? Okay. Well, are you willing to settle for that and take that risk though? And then hopefully you get, well, no, that's why I wanted to get some coverage in place. Well, then why would you look at doing this now? Why not just push it down the road like a lot of people would? And then when they pass away and their family's stuck paying for everything, why'd you just decide to start looking into this now? And then hopefully again, they're going to say something like, no, well, I want to get something in place that didn't happen. And then, well, what do you think you should do then? Or what do you think we should do then? I would probably say that. Well, what do you think we should do then? And then, let them respond. And like, you're basically trying to help them overcome their own objection. And if they're still undecided, just, continue with, again, can I make a suggestion? It seems to me that even if your kids or your spouse oppose this idea, and when I say kid spouse, I'm putting that in here for the version of the script, like I would typically use the person's name, right? So throughout this thing, if you guys see kid, spouse, whatever, I usually like to use the person's name, right? Make it more personalized. Well, can I make a suggestion? And again, you want to, well, the whole time I'm kind of reading like verbatim right now, but when you're saying these sort of things, you want to have like kind of like a concerned, curious tone so it doesn't feel confrontational, right? So it seems to me that even if your kids, your spouse, or even if Charlie opposes this idea, you still might not want them to bear that burden. Would that be the case? Well, in that case, maybe we should start the process now to make sure you're approved. And then we can always move the start date out by a couple of days or a couple of weeks, just so you have some time to talk things over with them before anything goes into effect. Would that be an appropriate solution? So throughout this first one, you're basically just trying to get them to understand like you don't want them to have to bear that burden, right? That's why you were looking into this. And you want to get them to say that. And then you're basically just trying to get them to say, even if they don't want, even if your kids tell you, hey, I don't think you should spend $100 a month to bear that burden. Like that's not really up to them, right? Heavy is what's the word? Heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? You have to kind of like make them realize like it's on them to make this decision to protect their own children because their children might not, or their spouse might not know what's best for them. And you're kind of trying to help them realize that. So that's kind of the first way to go about the spouse or the I need to talk to somebody else objection. And guys, the beautiful thing about doing telesales over the phone is you can just read this. Like you don't have to have this memorized. Like you can save this document right here. You can save this PDF. Obviously, there's objection handles in the script, but you don't have to have any of this memorized. Like you can just read it off the phone or read it off of your screen whenever you do get these objections. So that's kind of like the first talk track that sometimes I'll use. I'm definitely still not perfect at it to overcome this. But does anybody have any questions about this first one or want me to kind of go through it again? Anybody? No?
No, that was awesome. Love that.
Okay. And this is from like the Jeremy Minor stuff. And then another way for the I want to think about it, just realize when people say I want to think about it, that's obviously not a real objection, right? There's another objection in their mind. And ideally, you want to try to pull that out. So, one way you can kind of handle this is basically by scheduling an appointment with them. And then once you schedule the appointment with them, like okay, perfect, we'll put it in your calendar. We can talk 2 days from now at 5 p.m. What it does is it kind of takes the pressure off, right? So they think they're getting off the hook. Like at the end of the day, when people say they want to think about it, they're scared of, they think that they can maybe get better coverage elsewhere for cheaper. They think the price is too high. They don't want to make a wrong decision. A lot of old people, they've made bad decisions before. They've been sold before. How many times has someone been like, oh yeah, I've been hacked or whatever, they're just scared they're going to make the wrong decision and they're like nervous in a way, you know what I mean? So they just don't want to make a decision because they're just worried about doing the wrong thing. So this next one's really short and it's basically just about trying to get the pressure off to try to bring out the real objections. Like, yeah, no, it's totally fine. However, we can totally talk later. I just probably won't be available randomly as they do keep me pretty busy. There's a lot of veterans we need to help out here. So let's schedule a time to talk again that works for both of us. Talk to them, find a time. All right, perfect. Can you please put that in your calendar on your fridge or something just so we don't forget about each other? All right, great. But before I do go, what was it exactly that you want to go over in your mind just so I can understand and be more prepared when we do talk again next week or whatever it is, right? And then ideally, again, they're going to bring out the true objection like, well, I just want to make sure that they didn't have any coverage in place for me already. Or, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to go over my finances and make sure this is something I can actually afford. Or hopefully, again, hopefully, nothing works 100% of the time, but hopefully they're going to give you like the real reason. And then from there, you can attack the real objection, whatever it is, right? So this one's really short and it's basically just like you schedule a time with them to get the pressure off. And then once the pressure's off, ideally they'll actually open up and tell you the real objection. Anybody have any questions about that one? It's very simple. All right. And then this one's really my favorite. And this is one that I use in solar all the time. You guys know I would do that where it's like the life gets busy, blah, blah, blah. You're never going to do this. This is like just more of a typed out version of that, right? So that makes sense. I want some time. I want to think about it. Like, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I mean, we all make decisions differently based on our own perspective. We all have our own different way of doing things, right? Like, yeah, of course, I just need to think about it. But the problem is, if our normal way of thinking is delaying our decision making process, we typically start procrastinating. Other things come up, become more important because they usually will require our immediate attention. All of a sudden, life's going to get in the way, months will go by, and you still won't have the coverage that you said you needed for your daughter. Does that make sense, sir? Okay. So let me ask you this. Are you 100% happy with the current protection that you have in place? And that question is pretty much designed to make them say no, because 90% of the people that we talk to, they either don't have any coverage or they don't have enough. Maybe they have 5,000, 10,000, but maybe 10 years ago that it cost 5, 10 grand to get buried. Now it's 15 to 20 usually. So let me ask you this. Are you 100% happy with the current protection that you have in place? No. Okay. Do you want to let your current decision-making process continue to dictate how you make decisions going forward? Ideally, they're going to say no, or, something of that regard, right? It's another question, kind of make them designed to say no, or, not really, I do want to get some coverage in place eventually. Like, well, why not? Why do you want to get some coverage in place? And again, you're trying to kind of like make them realize they need the coverage, but come up with it from their own viewpoint, So let them tell you, like, make them tell you why, let them respond. And then, so what do you need to do then to change your current way of thinking in order to put yourself in a better position so that when you go to bed tonight, your family won't have to struggle and pick up the pieces when you're gone? Again, ideally, they're going to tell you why they want this, why they want to put some coverage in place for themselves. And you want to kind of make them think about what that would look like if they didn't have any coverage and they did pass away. And then when they kind of like give you that glimmer of hope, instead of being like immediately going into, all right, perfect, then let's get this coverage in place now. And then I would try to hit them with, okay, well, why now though? You certainly don't have to. I mean, a lot of people in your position will still push it off and unfortunately just wait until it's too late. So why now though? And then again, let them respond. And then what do you think we should do then? Again, hopefully they're going to tell you, well, we should probably just go ahead and get some coverage in place and maybe just post date it or whatever to a future date out so they have time to think about it, right? So that I really like that talk track. It's basically just, and again, guys, I'll send you this Word document I created right here. But I really like that talk track right there. It's really, really simple. It's not too long. But it's basically just saying like, hey, as soon as we get off the phone here, like life's gonna, easier way to say it, just like as soon as we get off the phone here, life's gonna get super busy. I know you have a lot of things to do in your day-to-day life, whether it's your job or helping out the grandkids or whatever it is. So as soon as we get off the phone here, life's gonna get busy. Time always will go by. And then eventually something happens where it's a medical condition and you're not able to get coverage, or God forbid an accident passes away. And then your daughter's going to be stuck paying for that funeral. Does that make sense? So are you happy with the current protection you have in place? No. Well, then do you want to let your current decision-making process and procrastination continue to dictate how you make decisions going forward? Why not? And then, so what do you need to do then in order to change your current way of thinking to put yourself in a better position so when you go to bed tonight, your family won't have to struggle and pick up the pieces and pay for everything when you're gone? And then when they give you that glimmer of hope, well, why now though? You certainly don't have to. A lot of people in your position just push it off and sadly wait until it's too late. So why now though? Why'd you start looking into this? Again, make them build the reason why they need it. And then again, go for the close, right? So it's all just, this one's really just about helping them realize that like what they think is going to become a 24-hour decision is just something they're going to push off forever, because we all know that is what's going to happen, right? Like if they just say they need 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, they're not going to think about it. It's not like they're going to like sit. I mean, some people will, and they'll call you back and say no. And if you absolutely can't close them, I always ask people to give me an answer either way, because I'd rather them have me tell me no. It just feels better for some reason. But this one's just all about helping people realize that they are going to push it off indefinitely. And we all know they are, right? And like, I think deep down, they know they are as well. They're just scared of making a decision, and you just kind of have to help them realize that the guys, they looked into this for a reason. Like they don't sit on the phone and talk to you for 20, 30 minutes about life insurance for if they're not interested at all. Like they are interested. They've thought about this already. They've probably been thinking about it for a long time, and the longer they wait, the more expensive it's going to get, the less likely they're going to get approved because health conditions tend to pop up, especially for the old people that we sell. So this one is all about just helping them realize like that time's going to go by. They're going to continue to put it off. Anybody have any questions about this one? No? All right. One more thing I want to talk about before we wrap up this quick training was the banking thing. So I think Juan, you had texted me and asked like about the getting the banking. What was kind of like your exact question? Do you mean just like if they're like nervous to give you the banking because they don't trust you, or it's more of like they want to think about it before they give you the banking?
Yeah, I guess just more so like I want to think about it before I get the banking.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I guess just like overall, like raising the closing percentage at the end.
Yeah. So I would say first off, when going for the banking, like, and I put this again, it's in the script, but I always, again, I'll have their routing number pulled up, right? And first thing I do is, all right, perfect. And then it looks again, so find out the reoccurring date, whatever date works the best for them. Like, okay, perfect. The third of every month. All right, beautiful. And then it looks like we are partnered with Wells Fargo in our system. That just means that another veteran has already used that bank before, so they're already on file. So 9 out of 10 times, the routing number that it automates here is correct. And then I read it. So it should be 091-300-422. Could you grab a checkbook for me and confirm that for me, sir? Ideally, again, of course, they just go get the checkbook. But there's going to be times too where they ask you why they need the checkbook, or like, well, I don't want to give out that information, and that's like a trust thing. So one thing I like to say if you're going for the check is, and ideally if they're just like, don't have a checkbook, like, okay, no, my immediate pivot is, okay, no worries, sir. We can always put a card on file and we can just get your name validated that way and go ahead and just get this application submitted. Is it a Visa or a MasterCard that your bank gave you? And then ideally, again, they're just like, oh, let me go find it real quick. It's a Visa. Like, okay, perfect, sir. There should be a 16-digit code on the front. That's the card number. Go ahead and read that back to me, and I'll go ahead and get this entered into your application. Again, of course, hopefully they read it back, right? That's just like the very assumptive way to do it. But if going for the check, there's like, if they tell you they're nervous about giving you the account number, like, well, I don't know if I want to give that out over the phone. But no, I completely understand, sir. Again, I usually go to feel, felt, found. I completely understand, sir. Most veterans feel the exact same way that I talk to. However, you've probably received a check or you've paid somebody with a check before for some sort of payment, right? But yeah, so every check, it has your routing and account number on there, sir. That's not exactly sensitive information that you can use to go on a shopping spree or anything like that. Only legitimate financial institutions can use those numbers. It's not just something when you pay somebody with a check, you're giving them your account number. So it's not exactly sensitive information that you can just use to go on a shopping spree. But they do require that when we do these applications, because that's how they validate your name. And there's money laundering laws when it comes to insurance applications where you can't just take out a policy for a random person. So they got to make sure that there is a way to pay this, but then also they have to make sure that your name on your account does match the name on your application. Does that make sense, sir? Okay, perfect. So what's that account number? So it's kind of just helping them realize that way I overcoming it is basically just helping them realize that it's not super sensitive information and it's not something you can just go on a shopping spree with. Like, because legit, when you pay somebody with a check, like a lot of old people, they've sometime in their life, they paid their fucking gardener or they've paid, somebody with a check, right? That's not exactly like the most trusted person, and because you can't just like, well, I guess you could, if you were like some sort of crazy hacker, you could use the account number to, open up some like crazy crypto account and withdraw money to a different country. I don't know, but you've got to I try to make them realize that like the account number isn't this super sensitive piece of information that somebody's just going to go on a shopping spree with. And you can always tell me, sir, I understand the line is secure though, and then go over what I just said. So that's with the banking as well. And then, if they can't find a checkbook or whatever, if they can't find a statement, they don't have online banking, like a lot of people don't, I'll try to pivot to the credit card. And I've heard people say what I've said before just now, but they'll add in there like, well, if I was asking for a credit or a debit card, then that would be a little bit different. But with an account number, you can't go on a shopping spree like what I just said. But I don't like to say that, because if you bring up that a credit card is sensitive information and it can be used for a shopping spree, then if they really can't find the check, they're definitely not going to find the credit card. So I don't like to like shoot myself in the foot in that way. But yeah.
What if like you can tell that they're gonna be cooked? Because like realistically, we can only use the debit or credit, with like Corebridge or I think Trans too.
Trans, yeah.
But like what if like that's like the only thing that that they're gonna get approved for is through a different carrier? Like, how do you continue to push for the banking?
Well, for one, I would say so. I if they have an iPhone and if they're not giving you the banking and they have an iPhone, I mean, if they're not giving you the banking, it's a trust issue, right? Because you're just a random person talking on the phone to you. And again, I'll bring up how I sent them my state license. And yeah, no, I completely understand, sir. And another thing you can say is, and that's why I sent you my state license. Did you have a chance to review that while we've been on the phone? Okay, go ahead and put me on speaker and go ahead and look at that just so you can confirm who I am and that I am who I say I am. And then ideally, again, they open it, they look at it like, all right, perfect, sir. I just wanted to make sure you saw that. So, I'm a licensed and appointed agent, had all the proper background checks and fingerprints done. And then what was that account number? But really, like, to answer your question, I'll just use I'll use that. I'll use the license. I'll use the line I gave you about the routing and account number not being a piece of sensitive information. If that's still not working, then I'll FaceTime them. If you FaceTime somebody and you're able to talk to them, they see you with your headset on, like that builds a lot of trust. And, sometimes I'll FaceTime somebody. It's kind of fun. They're like, oh, hey, how are you doing? And like almost like restarts the conversation over. And then I'll just talk to them for 4 or 5 minutes about, sometimes just random bullshit. And then what's in the background of their house. Oh, it's a cool deer head over there. Like, something like that. And like, okay, perfect. And then, sir, the only other thing we needed again for this application, again, just to submit your application, they do need to validate your name. And we do that with your account number. So you were able to find a check and then just ask for it again. But really, it's just like, I'll try to do pretty much everything I can to keep them on the phone, whether it's just like throwing in some more small talk there, going over, asking them, like scheduling a call and then asking them what the real objection is, like basically just pull out pretty much everything you can think of, and at the end of the day, if you go through, you ask 5 or 6 different times and you've gone over like 5 or 6 different methods of trying to get the close and it's still not working, then maybe it's just not your customer, and maybe they just aren't going to do this. Maybe they did just waste your time. But at the end of the day, I try to just pull out every stop and say anything that I can before I actually hang up the phone, and I had one yesterday that it's just like the guy was just so broke and he just couldn't afford. You can try to lower the coverage. You can try to post date it. Hey, let them know. And I try not to be like, hey, well, we can get this started next month. You have 30 days to think about it. This way we can just make sure we get you approved. Does that make sense? Like I'll use every single thing that I can think of, and if I go through every single word track or talk track that I can think of, and I can't think of anything else to say, then fuck it, but sometimes, and it won't work every time, but sometimes you get somebody on like the third or the fourth attempt, and you just have to have like different talk tracks and different ways of overcoming it, either memorized or where you can read it. So that way it's just like, this thing doesn't work. Like, all right, I'll just try this talk track. I'll try to make them realize that they're never going to do this if they keep pushing it off. I'll try to make them realize that, it's their responsibility, not their kid's responsibility. I'll try to make them try to go through every single opportunity that I can, and it's just like, eventually if they're not going to do it and I'm at the point where I can't think of anything else to say, I'll just be like, well, sir, like, I know you said you needed this coverage. So what would it take, to be able to get something in place right here today? Because we're really not supposed to do callbacks, sir. There is, a long list of veterans who do need this sort of help. So what exactly is it that's making you unsure about whether this is something that's going to work for you or not? And then, just really try to pull out everything I can. And just pretty much go just attempt after attempt after attempt, throw in some small talk there, do everything you can to make them trust you. So and that's probably not the best answer, but it's just like, just throw the kitchen sink at them, and the whole time, like I try not to be aggressive. But sometimes at the very end, if you thought of everything you can, like I'll be very firm and aggressive with them, be like, well, sir, like I know you do need some coverage in place. So like, what's stopping you from getting this? Just simple questions like that, try to pull out the real objection and then again, attack the real objection if you do get it.
Word. Thank you.
Yep. But I want to go over this like last one just real quick before we wrap up. So, that makes sense. We all make decisions differently based on our own perspective, and everybody has their own way of thinking, right? Yeah. So, but the problem is, sir, if our normal way of thinking is delaying our decision-making process, we typically start procrastinating. Other things come up that become more important because they require our immediate attention. All of a sudden, life is going to get in the way. Months are going to go by, and you still won't have the coverage that you said you needed for your daughter, Tammy. Does that make sense, sir? All right. So let me ask you this. Are you 100% happy with the current protection that you have in place? No, that's why I was looking into it. Well, do you want to let your current decision-making process continue to dictate how you make decisions going forward? Well, why not? Well, So what do you need to do then to change your current way of thinking in order to put yourself in a better position so that when you go to bed tonight, you know your family isn't going to have to struggle and pay for the funeral and or borrow money, raise money, and pick up the pieces when you're gone. And then, well, again, hopefully you get a good answer. Well, why now though, sir? I mean, most people put this off. You certainly don't have to. Nobody's forcing you to. A lot of people in your position would push it off and sadly wait until it's too late. We get calls like that all the time. So why do this now? All right, perfect. So what do you think we should do then? Should it be the bronze option or the silver option? And again, go for the close, you know? Um, wrap up here. Again, guys, just always focus on getting better. There's unlimited resources out there to take advantage of. I'm happy to like hop in a separate room with any of you guys at any single time, and I'll take time off dialing just to listen to you guys and give you feedback. And then again, just know the schedule for success. You know, I would say dialing 50 hours a week minimum, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? Like work this like a normal corporate job. You know, think about it like that. Obviously, we're all 1099. Like nobody's going to fire you if you're not on the Zoom call every single day, right? But at the end of the day, you know, dialing 50 hours a week is kind of like the minimum to reach those levels of success where you're selling 30, 40, 50K a month. I usually work 8:30 through 5:30 is my dialing time, Monday through Friday. It's about 9.5 hours, 10 hours, something like that. And then ideally those 50 hours, dialing 300 dials a day, 5 to 8 prezzies a day, and then 1 to 3 closes a day should be everybody's goal. I'll usually do 5 days a week. And then like I'm gonna work today and tomorrow as well because I was in a family vacation this week, so I definitely got to do some catching up. But then I'll usually just work like a half day on Saturday, you know, at least like a half day on Saturday, whether it's like 9 to 1 or 9 to 2 or something like that. And then another thing too is just try not to waste time during the day doing non-income generating activities. So non-income generating activities would be submitting applications, really submitting applications is the only thing I can really think of besides just like obviously scrolling on your phone and taking a 2 hour lunch break, stuff like that. Like obviously I know we all have lives and we all have things to do, but just try to like your 9 to 5, those are your hours when you're able to call people, right? That's when you're able to make sales. So I try to use as much of that time as I can to generate new income, right? And then obviously I'll try to do, if I'm using Americo or Ethos or one of those carriers that really does require you to be on the phone, obviously try to get the application done while you're on the phone with them. Even Corebridge, you don't have to do on the phone with them, but it's going to save you time later. So try to do applications while you're on the phone with them, especially if it's a carrier that requires a text or an email code. But try to focus like 9 to 5. Those are your income generating activities. And then the things that are not, or even like recruiting calls, stuff like that, training calls, that's still in my mind income generating activity. So, but just as far as like submitting applications, paperwork, checking your commission stubs, blah blah blah, shit like that, if you're going to do that stuff, save that for the evening, you know, or save that for the early morning. Do that whenever it's a time that you couldn't really be dialing somebody and making money, you know. And of course, guys, be positive. You know, at the end of the day, no leads batches are going to be perfect. There's going to be a ton of people that say, oh, I was looking for disability, whatever. Like we all know this, but just everyone's using the same leads, and there's people using the same leads that are selling 60 to 80K a month that some people are using and selling only 10 to 20K a month. So just be positive. You know, at the end of the day, like it is what you make of it. And just remember that nobody is more special. The only reason people usually make more money in this industry is they want it more, they're working harder, and they have more self-belief, and they just have more trust in the process. And again, guys, like obviously we'll do these calls on Saturdays for our group, but they have what is it? I know I've posted about it multiple times, but they have the company or the agency does training calls every Monday. I don't want to tell you guys wrong. So 1 second here. Every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, they do the team call. And then Wednesday at 7 p.m., that's kind of like the team call is usually some training on there. Wednesday, the business overview meeting. That's probably not something everybody needs to be on every week. That's more so for new people. And then every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, they do the closers training, which is just like specifically sales training. So definitely be on all of those. And one thing too that I remember Ronnie had said on this last training last week was, and if you guys don't know who Ronnie is, Ronnie Salem, he was like the MVP of all of FFL last year. He basically went from just starting to within 12 months had like a $2 million a month agency. And, you know, obviously he's making multiple 6 figures every month. Like he's killing it. Right. And even at the point he's at now, and this is something like I haven't really done either. He's like, I don't even know how to read half the commission statements. He's like, I don't even know how to read American Amicable. He's like, I've never even looked. Like, if you're like and I know it's like everyone has like a different mindset about this, but I just try to have like an abundance mindset and just know if I put in the work and I make the sales, like the money's going to come, and it has. So just like don't have that mindset of where you're just like making sure every last cent gets paid out to you. Like, obviously, I'm not saying like if you think your commissions are wrong, obviously say something, and it's good to check them. But at the end of the day, like that's not an income generating activity, and that's not something like I like to spend my time on. I honestly swear to God, I've probably looked at 4 or 5 commission statements in the last 7 months. And that's because I've been paying out people out of my own, sometimes out of my own accounts if I'm writing applications for somebody that like doesn't have a state license or something, you know? So like, don't I'm not saying don't look at that shit, but definitely don't waste time during the day looking at that shit. Like, use your time as effectively as you can to generate income, you know? But that's really it, guys. Anybody have anything else they want to go over? Any questions about closing? Anything else like that?
Yo, I was gonna get you to. I was like typing it out and kind of lost track at the end. But when you're going over the check, just like having the routing and account number on the check, how'd you word it at the very end? Like around not going on a shopping spree.
Okay. Sorry. I thought you were going to ask how to find it. I was like, dude, come on. But
No.
okay. But yeah. So for one, for if we have any, I think we do have some people on here who aren't licensed yet or going through the process or whatever. So if you're confused of what you're talking about, you can look up, and most people don't know this, but you can look up the routing number for every state. And obviously make sure they opened it in that state because that's where the routing number is going to be accurate. So you can look up the routing number for every state. So how I word it is, obviously read the routing number to them. And if they give you the objection of, oh, I don't want to get that out of the phone, how I word it is, yeah, no, sir, I totally understand. A lot of veterans that I talk to, they feel the exact same way. But have you ever paid somebody or received some sort of payment with a check? Like, have you ever paid somebody with a check before? Yeah, of course you have. Like, okay, so when you give somebody a check, it has their routing and your account number on there. So it's not really sensitive information that can just be used to go on a shopping spree. And nobody can just like take money out of your account with that. It can only be used by legitimate financial institutions. Does that make sense, sir? All right, perfect. So then again, I have the routing number as blah, blah, blah. Can you confirm that for me? Okay, what's the account number? So that's how I word it.
Appreciate it, bro.
Does that answer your question though, Garrett?
Yeah, it was. I was typing it out. I had myself on mute, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'll type that out and put this in this script or something or this training before I send this out. But yeah, it's just, have you ever paid somebody with a check before or received a check from like a friend or anything like that for some sort of payment? But yeah, so whenever you hand somebody a check, it has your routing and account number on there. So it's not exactly, I'll kind of like almost laugh like, why don't you know this? But it's not exactly sensitive information that can just be used by anybody to go on a shopping spree and pull money out of your account. Only legitimate financial institutions like banks can use that to, process transactions. So it's not exactly sensitive information, sir, that can be used to just go on a shopping spree. Does that make sense? All right, perfect. And then I have the routing number is this, etc.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like the very end. Like it's only, by legitimate financial institutions. Like little word tracks like that help so much at times.
Yeah. And I mean, it's true. Like it's not like you can just like have a routing and account number and go to, Walmart or whatever and just like buy shit,
Yeah, I've never even really thought about it like that either. So
yep.
That's cool. Appreciate.
Yes, sir. Anybody else got anything they want to go over before we start dialing? Word. Well, I appreciate you guys hopping on. I hope this helps a little bit. Again, we'll do these every Saturday. So if you guys have anything for next week you want to go over, as always, like text me. And I'll probably have like different people give these trainings. So it's not just me talking every single week. But yeah, if you guys have anything, let me know. And good luck dialing today. Let's make some money.
Appreciate it, Joe.
Good time, bro.
Yes, sir.